The War of the Roses was one of the bloodiest and most turbulent conflicts in English history, a struggle that spanned over 3 decades and tore the country apart. It was a war of ambition, betrayal, and shifting allegiances, fought between 2 rival branches of the same royal family, the House of Lancaster and the House of York. Their dispute over the English throne led to a prolonged period of political instability, brutal battles, and the eventual rise of the Tudor dynasty, which would change England forever. It all began in the early 15th century when King Henry VI, a weak and mentally unstable ruler from the House of Lancaster, struggled to maintain control over England. His reign was marked by financial mismanagement, military failures in France, and widespread discontent among the nobility. Many saw Henry as unfit to rule, and his inability to lead paved the way for the House of York, led by Richard, Duke of York, to challenge his authority. The Duke of York was a powerful noble with a legitimate claim to the throne through his descent from King Edward III. As Henry's rule continued to falter, the seeds of civil war were sown. The first major battle of the war erupted in 1455 at St. Albans, where the Yorkists, led by Richard, defeated the Lancastrians and took control of the king. This was not just a military victory, it was a statement that the Yorkists were a force to be reckoned with. However, the Lancastrians were not ready to concede. Queen Margaret of Anjou, Henry VI's fiercely determined wife, took charge of the Lancastrian cause. She was a formidable leader, rallying her supporters and preparing for a prolonged struggle. Over the next decade, England was thrown into chaos, with battles breaking out across the country. One of the most decisive moments of the conflict came in 1461 at the Battle of Toten, often considered the bloodiest battle in English history. It was fought in a snowstorm, and the Yorkists, led by Edward, the son of the late Duke of York, achieved a crushing victory. The scale of the slaughter was immense, with thousands of men perishing in the freezing cold. Following this triumph, Edward seized the throne as King Edward IV, forcing Henry VI into hiding. The Yorkists had won a significant victory, but the war was far from over. For nearly a decade, Edward IV ruled England with relative stability, but his reign was not without challenges. Internal divisions within the Yorkist faction and the ever-present Lancastrian threat kept the kingdom on edge. In 1470, an unlikely alliance between the Lancastrians and Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick, also known as the Kingmaker, temporarily restored Henry VI to the throne. However, this resurgence was short-lived. The following year, Edward IV returned, defeating the Lancastrians at the Battle of Barnet and the Battle of Tewkesbury. Henry VI was captured and later murdered in the Tower of London, marking the apparent end of the Lancastrian cause. Despite Edward IV's triumph, the War of the Roses did not conclude with his reign. After his death in 1483, the throne passed to his young son, Edward V, but the boy king was soon declared illegitimate by his uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, who seized the throne as Richard III. This move was met with outrage, and Richard's short reign was plagued by suspicion and rebellion. The most damning accusation against him was the disappearance of Edward V and his younger brother, the princes in the Tower, who were allegedly murdered to secure Richard's hold on power. In 1485, the conflict reached its dramatic climax at the Battle of Bosworth Field. A new challenger emerged, Henry Tudor, a distant Lancastrian relative with a claim to the throne. Supported by discontented nobles and foreign allies, Henry led his forces against Richard III. The battle was fierce, but Richard was ultimately killed in combat, and his army collapsed. Henry Tudor emerged victorious and was crowned Henry VII, marking the end of the War of the Roses and the beginning of the Tudor dynasty. Henry VII solidified his rule by marrying Elizabeth of York, uniting the warring factions and symbolically ending the bitter feud between the two houses. This marriage laid the foundation for a new era of stability in England. The Tudors would go on to become one of the most famous dynasties in history, bringing about the Renaissance in England and expanding the nation's influence on the world stage. The War of the Roses left a lasting impact on England. It reshaped the monarchy, redefined noble power, and set the stage for the centralized rule of the Tudors. It was a war that demonstrated the dangers of political division and the destructive power of unchecked ambition. The echoes of this conflict can still be felt in English history, a reminder of a time when the fate of a nation was decided on the battlefield.